Welcome to Harry's Hook. I am a journalist, big fan of boxing. I've written published articles on it. I also train and spar. The colossal mega fight is nigh upon us. Canelo Alvarez, the undisputed super middleweight champion and face of boxing for nearly a decade, collides in a historic battle on September 13th with Terence "Bud" Crawford, former two-division undisputed king and someone many argue is the best pound-for-pound boxer on the planet today. Bud is truly attempting greatness here, leaping up 2, you could almost say 3 weight classes to take on the younger undisputed champion in Canelo. Ludicrous, right? Absurd. Well, some claim Crawford's skills and quickness will be too much, especially considering how inactive and uninspired Canelo looked in his most recent fight, I use that term generously, against William Skull. In today's video, I'm going to preview Canelo versus Crawford, talk about the boxers, their keys to victory, dispel common notions about this fight that many fans have, discuss some X factors that could determine the outcome, and then ultimately give my prediction. Let's start with some top-line numbers. The defending champion Canelo Alvarez is 35 years old, and he holds an impressive record of 63-2-2 with 39 knockouts. He stands about 5'7.5" and carries a 70.5-inch reach. Canelo is an intelligent, plotting pressure fighter who economically breaks down the opponent, targeting the head and body while mitigating incoming damage with a stout defense and an iron chin. Terence "Bud" Crawford is 37 years old, on the precipice of 38. He's undefeated at 41-0 with 31 knockouts. He stands at 5'8" and carries a 74-inch reach. Bud is an athletically gifted boxer-puncher who can effectively switch hit orthodox and southpaw, pick opponents apart with accurate and varied punches, and finish the job with a ruthless killer instinct. The best weapon Crawford has to potentially win this fight is his jab. I gained a whole new level of respect for it after he torched Errol Spence in 2023. I picked Crawford to win, but heading into the fight, if someone was talking about the importance of the jab, it was Spence's that they were analyzing. But Crawford dominated Errol with his own, even dropping Spence with a swivel jab. And it's worth noting, when Canelo has recently had trouble in fights, it's been against boxers with great jabs, like Dmitry Bivol and Gennady Golovkin. I think Bud will have to center his game plan around a consistent yet unpredictable jab, upstairs and downstairs. But like I said, consistent yet unpredictable, changing rhythm, speed, targets. Because before Canelo primarily became a come-forward pressure boxer, he made a lot of use of slick counters, and will still pick up on patterns and proceed to counter lazy or telegraph jabs. However, Canelo has to take caution about being too predictable himself. We all know that Crawford is a brilliant counterpuncher, and Canelo has become quite enamored with certain combos, including the double or triple jab followed by the overhand right. He practically spammed this against Jermell Charlo, who had also jumped up from 154, though Charlo was undisputed at that weight. I can see Bud devising and executing counters to this favored but rather straightforward attack sequence, perhaps with his brilliant step-back counter uppercut. However, some use of that combo would be a good sign for Canelo because it would indicate that he is utilizing his jab. One of the main problems with Canelo's recent performance against Skull was that his jab pulled an Irish exit on the Mexican. It practically vanished without any warning. Over 12 rounds, he fired 63 jabs and landed 8 by CompuBox count. 8! What Canelo fans need to see is more of what he did against Jermell Charlo. Saul fired 189 jabs that night, 3 times more than what he did against Skull, and varied the usage. He used it to occupy the guard, blind or distract Charlo while firing the right, and just straight up as a power jab for damage. Okay, let's dispel some common, but I think foolish notions about this fight from both Canelo and Crawford's fan bases. A lot of people seem to think Bud is the more skilled boxer, maybe because he's from lighter divisions and is quicker. He is in fact the more explosive athlete. But if you know what you're looking at, you'll understand just how skillful and intelligent Canelo is and has had to be in order to win titles from 154 to 175, and often as the smaller man. He employs tricky feints, precise counters, deceptive angles on his punches. I was talking about Canelo being repetitive and potentially predictable against Charlo with the double jab overhand, but he also conditioned Charlo to expect that overhand around the guard until round 7, when he looped that right hand down the middle instead, leading to a knockdown. There's also a lot of Terence Crawford fans who are claiming this is going to be Mayweather versus Canelo Part 2. Silly for several reasons. 1. Terence Crawford is not Floyd Mayweather. They fight with completely different styles and temperaments. Mayweather, specifically Money Mayweather, who Canelo fought, was a defensive maestro, impossibly slick, patient, a brilliant orthodox counterpuncher who utilized a number of guards, including prominent use of the Philly shell. Terence Crawford is skilled and intelligent, no doubt about it, but the switch hitter's brilliance mostly comes from his offense, including how his feet and hands work in concert with each other. Bud is defensively skilled, but not always defensively sound. At times he falls asleep or becomes reckless and gets caught. It's much due to his mindset. He's looking to attack, and if he gets caught, he instinctually goes for his get back. He's very much a fighter, perhaps even more than a boxer. He's a sophisticated brawler, often leveraging his size, toughness, and raw athleticism, frequently absorbing blows before taking out his opponents. That's not how Mayweather operated. Another reason this is not a Mayweather versus Canelo redux. 23-year-old weight-drained Canelo is a different animal than 35-year-old undisputed super middleweight champion Canelo. Just stating facts here, trying to put things in context. Now for Canelo fans, they need to accept that Crawford versus Madrimov is not as telling as they think it is for Canelo versus Crawford. Yes, Madrimov landed some crosses which should be a bit concerning, but he had been making Crawford hesitant and out of sorts through his constant tricky movement. Styles make fights. Madrimov and Canelo have vastly different styles. Just look at the footwork, movement, and constant feints of Madrimov. Nothing like Canelo's more plodding pressure. And here's a little hot take for you. I don't think the idea of Crawford stopping Canelo is quite as outrageous as many think it is. I'm going to discuss that after I dissect the X factors, but first, if you enjoy this content, do me one solid. Drop a like on this video for the algorithm, and if you want to stay updated on my latest analysis, commentary, live streams, subscribe to the channel. The first X factor is what we obviously can't ignore, the size issue, right? Crawford is jumping up 2, arguably 3 weight classes since he's only had 1 fight at 154 to take on Canelo, undisputed champ, at 168. And there's a lot of questions. How much will Crawford weigh on fight night? Is he going to bulk up? Maybe that allows him to absorb and dish out some more punishment. Or could it slow him down and erode his gas tank? Or does he weigh pretty much what he normally does and maintain that speed advantage? How will he react after getting hit by Canelo when we've seen him wobbled by smaller fighters? Clearly size and how Crawford handles the weight jump, it's an X factor. Ring rust. The last time Crawford fought was last year, August 3rd, against Madrimov. It'll have been 406 days since that bout once he steps in against Canelo, who fought, I guess, much more recently on May 3rd this year. Bud is already known as a bit of a slow starter. Long layoffs tend not to help that. Now, while Crawford has had some year-long breaks in between his bouts, including between Spence and Madrimov, you tend to worry a bit more about ring rust and long layoffs as a fighter ages. And that brings me to my final X factor, Father Time. Now this is interesting because it is an X factor for both of these boxers. Chronologically, Bud is older at 37, nearly 38, but Canelo, I believe, has more wear and tear at 35, considering some of the wars he's endured, as well as the fact that he's been a pro since he was 15 years old. In his last outing against William Skull, He looked like he was feeling those years. Saul was slow, inactive, straight up boring. Perhaps he was just uninspired due to Skull's resistance to engage, but it was unequivocally a poor performance. Bud is older, but if the Skull fight is an indicator, then it would appear that Canelo is on a steeper decline. Let's make our way to a verdict. There's a few different ways this fight can go. Of course, Canelo can just spark Crawford. Yeah, Nello hasn't KO'd anyone for a hot minute, but his previous ops have been quite a bit larger than him and significantly larger than Bud. If you don't think Cinnamon can still crack, you just might be on it. Nello could win a decision where he wobbles or drops Crawford and leaves him bruised up. Bud could get a decision. One would think that he'd have to use his speed, movement, jab, and execute a disciplined game plan. However, most seem to be outright dismissing the possibility of Terence winning by knockout. I understand why. Canelo has shrugged off blows from Gennady Golovkin and Sergey Kovalev. Crawford does not generate that kind of power. But similar to Tank, when it comes to Bud, it's more about the precision, punch selection, and timing. Plus, Nello is getting older. Maybe that durability isn't quite what it used to be. But that durability has been complemented and enhanced by his defense and ability to mostly avoid getting caught clean. Crawford would have to counter using that precision to land right on Canelo's chin with a shot he doesn't see coming to have a real chance at hurting him upstairs. But what about to the body? When was the last time Canelo's body was truly tested? Neither Golovkin nor Kovalev landed effectively downstairs, and Crawford is a sneaky good body puncher who could execute a well-placed, well-timed liver shot. And if we wind up getting a Canelo performance similar to what we did against Skull, Bud is going to piece him up, and it could get ugly. It is a bit of a leap of faith for Canelo supporters to assume that what we saw most recently against William Skull is not indicative of where Saul is right now as a fighter. However, if we indeed don't get that version of Canelo, and we get a version prior to the Skull fight, Crawford's got some serious problems. And ultimately, his fans will have to make steeper and more numerous leaps of faith when predicting a Bud Crawford victory. Leaps of faith about how Bud handles the weight jump and the power of Canelo, how his speed and stamina hold up at 168, how he handles Canelo's body attack, what he looks like at nearly 38 years old and over 400 days since his last bout. A leap of faith that he could even be awarded a close decision here. We've seen the judges tend to favor Canelo's style. He's also the cash cow who has more fights on his contract. And of course, how does Bud fare against a boxer of Canelo's caliber? He's never faced anyone of this quality. Not Errol Spence, not Sean Porter, not Kell Brook. Saul, on the other hand, has stepped in against brilliant boxers like Floyd Mayweather, Gennady Golovkin, Dmitry Bivol, etc. Not the same style as Bud, of course, but the caliber can't be denied. And Team Nello addressed the style issue by bringing Jaron Boots Ennis into the camp as a sparring partner. That is quite literally the best boxer on earth to prepare Canelo for Terence Crawford. Boots is a large welterweight who's moving up to 154, is slightly taller than Bud, has the same reach, is also a highly athletic boxer puncher with electric hand speed, is a dynamic switch hitter, a sophisticated brawler. Bringing him into the camp was brilliant. Despite all of that, I've still been tempted to pick Bud. I just have this nigh unshakable belief in him as an athlete and a person that he just can't be denied, that he'll find a way to win and will stop at nothing to achieve victory. But Canelo is straight up gangster as well. I think when they look into each other's eyes in that ring, they're going to see something very familiar. The problem for Crawford is he's not like Floyd Mayweather and does not possess that defense. He doesn't box like Bivol, nor does he carry the same size to absorb Canelo's blows, nor the temperament to resist getting drawn into risky exchanges. In order for Bud to win, he's going to have to fight differently at nearly 38 than he has in the past. Or Canelo needs to be washed. I just don't think that either will occur, or at least the odds are against it. Crawford is not all that slick. He's there to be hit, especially during exchanges, and when he does get caught, that tends to be when he puts the pedal to the floor and is at his most dangerous. He'll absorb what welterweights land on him while in the process of stomping them out. It makes him an absolute blast to watch and must-see TV. But taking those same blows from Canelo spells serious trouble. Plus, Nello, as far as I'm concerned, has a better defense and a stronger chin, along with more power, which gives him a significantly higher margin for error. Also, he's economical with his punches, so that gives Bud fewer counter opportunities. But Nello will also pressure him and use the kinds of feints that have created openings to land on Crawford in the past. Even if I'm wrong and Canelo really is a shot fighter, the judges like his style. He's a massive economic force, and he's had favorable scoring in the past. Ultimately, though, I see Canelo stopping Crawford in the mid to late rounds. And that right there is Harry's Hook. Let me know what you think in the comments. Who do you have winning this fight, Canelo or Crawford, and how?